Well, now, there is nothing horrible and actually disheartening to any business owner than failing or having a business that fails or a business that is actually not meeting the thing that you anticipating it to meet. For those who are in business, they can actually attest to this, and it's so disheartening and it feels like you can do anything to make sure that you salvage the business. By the way, I don't know whether you know this. Do you know people do develop what we call the sentimental attachment to their business? Just the way you usually give birth to a kid, and look at that kid, you can do anything and anything required for us that kid to be able and grow well. The same case applies to business, and business can actually make you sleepless and have sleepless nights. That's a reality. Today we're gonna check on 5 things that your business will fail terribly if you do not check them as early as you can. All right, if you can check on these 5 areas, everything will run okay and everything will be good. How about you do this? Just be a little bit generous and hit that like button. Make sure that you subscribe, put a comment on the comment section. If you're a business person, let me know what you think, or maybe you're thinking about getting into it. These are things that you need to have them way before even jumping into the business, because guess what, we're gonna deny this. Business can actually make you wealthy, and it's one of the areas where actually, by the way, if you want to kill poverty way early, get yourself into the business. But before you do, watch these 5 points. Now, point number 1, the very major thing that actually helps or makes people or makes some businesses to fail, it is because of what we call, you don't pay yourself. You don't pay yourself. And by the way, this is sometimes is a bit confusing when I tell somebody, hey, you don't, how much do you pay yourself? It becomes a little bit confusing because most of the people get into the business with this mentality, hey, after all, it's all my business. So when I get that gross income whereby I pay my workers if I have any, I pay my utilities, that the water, electricity, I pay my bills, I pay my what we call the suppliers, the distributor is applicable, I pay my what we call it, these licenses, the permits and what have you. So by virtue of that, you then tend to think like, the remaining is my money, so there's nothing, there's no big deal about it. So listen, let me tell you one secret. Well, what you're supposed to understand is that if you do not pay yourself, then you have to pay your bills as well. You have to eat, you have to do the transport, maybe you have a car and all those kind of things. Then where do you get that money to do exactly that? Exactly. Now you're stealing from your business. And I'm going to ask you this question, and I want you to listen to it very carefully. See, whatever you do in that business, if you were to employ someone like you, how much would you pay you? All right. So whenever you ask yourself that question, that's the time now you'll be like, okay, fine. How much do I participate on in this business? If I were to if I was to replace me and employ somebody who plays my role exactly as me, how much will I pay them? Oh, is it 20,000 or 30,000? Then pay yourself that amount of money. Because that now, when you pay yourself 30,000, 40,000, that is actually dictates how much you're going to spend back at your home. See, here there are 2 lives. And you have to understand this. There are 2 lives here when it comes to the business. There is the business life. There is a business life. Okay. There's a business life. You have to pay the rent in that particular area. You have to pay the permit, the licensing, pay the workers, and all those kind of things. And then there is a private life, the private life or the personal life. Remember one thing: you're starting this business for it to actually cater for your responsibilities. I'm going to ask you this very simple question. Let's say the house rent, or let's call it what we call the overheads. Overheads are everything that you have to pay each and every month in a business. Let's say the overheads from the business perspective, you need like 40,000 at the end of the month, 40K. And then when it comes to the recurrent expenditure to your home, you need to fuel your car, you need to eat, you need to pay your health insurance, you need to make sure that you educate people, that is the children or the kids if you may like, you need to also eat and all those kind of things. Let's say the recurrent expenditure on the other hand, maybe you require like another 40K, okay? Now, listen one thing. So if you actually manage to get this 80,000 at the end of the month, it happens you are at par. It happens that, hey, everything is running okay from your home and everything is running okay from the business. At that particular point, we say you sit on balance, you sit on fence, just in case something happens on this business. Maybe there's something break out in something in your business, you cannot be able to cater for it because, by the way, there is no profit that you're making, and you actually, it's like you're being employed. You show up to this business for you to pay the overheads, pay for your for your expenses back at home, and done. See, what you're supposed to understand is this: the moment you define how much you're gonna pay yourself, and by the way, I came to realize one thing. You realize that the business is giving you 15, maybe the business is giving you 500 per day, and the expenses is at your 40,000. So then it happens in real sense you're being paid 15,000 at the end of the month. okay, and you need 40,000. Guess what happens now? You drain the account of the business to make sure that you cater for the personal things. So it is good that you pay yourself. The moment you pay yourself, it helps you to do something called, now help me to introduce the second point, that is what we call lack of separation of accounts. Okay, separation of accounts. What does it mean? It happens, you have to have two accounts. You must have the business account, okay, and then you must have what we call the personal account. By the way, if you're in business, I usually recommend you having three accounts. What does it mean? Three accounts in this regard. The first account, this is the account where we call the business account. The business account basically means this is where everything to run that particular business is usually placed. This is the amount of money to buy the stock or everything that you're selling in that particular business, how much you need to pay for your workers, how much you need to pay for your licenses, your permits, and what have you. And then the second account that I would advise you to have, it's some account called the personal account. The personal account on this regard is where now, when whatever you pay yourself, this is where you keep the money. Say, for example, if you pay yourself 30,000, 40, 50, 70, whatever the amount of money, you keep it in this personal account. Now, from that personal account is where you get your money to pay your house rent back at home if you have not billed, or if you have, then to fuel your car, to make sure that at least for the entertainment services, to buy your clothing, paying the debts if you have any, doing all those kind of things, just running simply if you are employed, or where that money could have gone towards the recurrent expenditures, that money usually get it from the personal account. Okay, and then the last account I would recommend that you have is an account that is called the D account, the developmental account. What does it mean? That is what is in excess in this business. Listen, this is where people don't get it correct. See, let's say the turnover in your business, you really need like 400K. This is what you have in your business, like stock. If you were to sell all the stock, 400K will show up to your account. And with that regard, after you pay everybody, what happens is that after you pay everybody, the 400K remains out there. What you've made as a profit to your account, let's say you pay yourself 60,000. That's what you pay yourself at the end of the month. And then whatever remains as an excess, what do I mean? Whatever remains in the sense of you've paid your workers and the business have actually taken his, and also the stock for the business is actually there. Whatever is in the excess, you put it in a development account. This development account, this is where now you think about two things: either expanding the business, or you think about diversifying or getting yourself into a different thing. This is where you get the money from. For example, let's say from the business account, something has gone bad. You really need some cash. Maybe you are short of stock. You can borrow from the development account. You borrow from this account. Maybe you've borrowed like 70K. Once you borrow that, you pump it into a business. Business does good. You pay back that 70K back to the development account. Okay. And then the other thing is that this personal account, this is where you put all the money to actually sustain yourself, and you make sure as much as you can that money actually sustains. So if you happen to salvage something from the personal account, these accounts can actually borrow each other at any given moment. But if you borrow from the development account, then you have actually to pay back. And if the development account has to borrow from the business, maybe there's something you want to buy, or maybe you've realized there is a property that you want to buy, or maybe you want to repair some things maybe in your home, maybe there is a blockage in a plumbing work, the electricity work, and what have you. Once you borrow from the business or from the personal account, to make sure that you pay back. So when you have the separation of accounts, you know what goes where and why. At that particular point, we say you're actually playing safe and everything is okay as far as the business is concerned. But if you do not have something like this, you're having everything in one account, that is the genesis of a problem. I'm going to give you a very simple example of a client who called me. This guy has a butchery, or where he is sort of a restaurant, and he's selling meat and what have you. And then back at home, he has a farm where he has the pigs, he has the goats and chicken and what have you. See, these are two separate businesses. There is the farm business and there is the hospitality business. Now what happens, the guy cannot even monitor. For example, he gets like a goat from his farm, and the goat goes by the process for it to made available in the restaurant and what have you. The guy does not even capture how much he could have bought that goat, assuming that he didn't have that farm. So he just said, it's my business, it's my thing. So you grab it, you sell it from here, then you have the money that you've made from the business. Then remember one thing, you have to pay, you have to separate of workers or labor. You need to pay people who are working from the farm, and also you need to pay for people who are working in the hospitality business. Now what happens, you do not even have a track record. Then you're supposed to have two separate accounts, okay? Two separate accounts for these two separate businesses. Like for example, if you grab a goat from the farm, you know, hey, guess what, if I was to show up to someone else farm, could have bought this goat at 10,000. Now I've sold this goat at I've bring that goat worth 10,000 to my business of hospitality, and now in this business of hospitality, that goats have actually made to sell, maybe let's say at 17,000. Then it means the 7,000 is the profit that has been realized by the hospitality business. Now the 10,000 is the capital, is the money that I need to pay that particular farm. And that particular point, now you go back to the farm and ask yourself, I sold a goat at 10,000. It cost me like say 6,000 to make sure that I grow this goat from all the way where he is up to where it is now. I've sold it at 10,000. Therefore, it means the profit that I've made from this goat from the farm, it is actually 4,000. And this goat has actually made me 7,000 from this hospitality business. So when you have the separation of all those kind of things, therefore, those workers from the farm will be paid by the 4,000 that you made from the profit that you sold the goat from. The workers who are working in the hospitality business will be paid by the 7,000 that you've realized as a profit by virtue of you buying a goat at 10,000 from your farm. Did you get what I'm just saying? So when you have the separation of accounts in all this manner, you'd be able to do something in business. By the way, I've taken a little bit of time on those areas because those are very sensitive areas. Number three, the other thing that makes people fail into businesses is whereby you become bossy too early. See, becoming bossy too early, being bossy too early. What does it mean? You find somebody has started a business today, you're micromanaging people, you cannot even do something, you're just there, you're coming with this, maybe something you saw in an employment, your boss was just actually there giving instructions. You just roll up your sleeves, especially when you're starting. Roll up your sleeves. If maybe it's about sweeping, making a clean, serving the customer, serving the clients, you are there, you're doing the thing, you're serving the people, you're talking to them, you are all those kind of things. But if you just behave and acting bossy too early, that can actually have a very negative whatever it comes to the business. You're employing people, you're micromanaging them, you're not even letting people express their, what we call the ability to run the business. Obviously, at a monetary, well, obviously you have to monitor them and all those kind of things. So be keen and cautious when you're dealing in that perspective. Number four, as I finish on these particular things, you actually lack what we call, you lack constant learning. You lack what we call constant learning and adjustment. Let me tell you one secret. See, in business, you have to adjust yourself. See, things keep on changing. All right. For example, you cannot be running a business the way you are running it, let's say 5 or 10 years ago. You need to have an online presence. If you realize the technology is taking over, every business, irrespective of whatever it is actually online. So also have an online presence. You make sure that you have a page somewhere. At least you have a budget for the advertisement. You have a budget for maybe partnering with the influencers and all those kind of things and what have you. So adjust with time. Make sure that at least you understand what it means to adjust yourself, so that at least you can be able to also move at. If you realize that now people for example, if you go to the photography business, if you look at it back then, people used just to you just somewhere they have made, you go there, they take you pictures and what have you. For those who are in Africa, they can attest to what I'm talking about. Nowadays you find those people are still doing the same thing. And if you go to for example, if you go to the streets of Nairobi, you find some young guys with those big soft box like this one that I'm having here that is shining light on me. Well, I know you cannot be able to see this, but there is. So you find these guys with those soft box, others with other wonderful equipment. They're giving you photos, very nice photos, but our old grandfather, they're still clinging to the old traditional way of doing the thing. So it is good you move with the time and adjust yourself to the next level. And that's why you find I was about to give a certain example, but I won't. Okay, now point number 5, the last point, is where you guess what, some businesses are just toxic. Just like we usually have a toxic relationship, some businesses are just toxic, and you have to identify this way early. By the way, I'm gonna make a whole video talking about the signs of a toxic business, because there's some businesses that you start them, you feel like you've used a lot of money, and then you apply what we call the sunk cost fallacy. Sunk cost fallacy is whereby you feel like, hey, I've gone too far to quit, I have to push it until it works. Or maybe turning back and doing something different could have been a better result compared to you just pushing it along. Some business, that's the way you usually feel like, oh my goodness, the relationship is not even working, but I'm gonna cling to it for better for worse, one day it's gonna work. Some things you find is a very technical, unless you guys you sit down and have a candid conversation, things will never change. So the same case applies to business. And at that particular point, what happens is that you have to monitor how the business is doing. The business has been in operation for the last 1 year. Is it not showing up any signs? You've actually borrowed money to pump into the business. You've adjusted to yourself the customer service, the commodity that you're selling. You change the location. You try the best as you can, but the business is not reviving. Perhaps the vibrations of the economies are telling you you're either in a wrong business, or maybe there's something that is not going okay, or you're selling a wrong commodity, or your pricing is the problem. But if you adjust all this and then you still realize that something is not working out, then maybe perhaps it is not your area. You need to adjust yourself and go back to other thing. And by the way, never have this shame of closing up and doing other things. No, we don't even call that, is not even giving up. That is called the tactical withdrawal, where you withdraw tactically so that you can come back with a full force and be able to do something. That is exactly how it goes about. And that's why we always advise people, if you want to get yourself into a business, get into it with the money that you know you are at peace with it. You know, you are getting into a business that with the money that you know, hey, guess what? In case anything happens, I'm a good piece with this particular amount of money. And that's why you find whenever somebody gets into the business, the very primary thing to do is to do what we call the capital preservation. They try as much as they can to make sure that they recoup back, or they do what we call what do we call it, you break even your cash and progress to the next level. Guess what, guys? That marks the end of my video, but I'm gonna make a video a whole about the toxic business and how it is and how can you actually identify it. For now, it's a goodbye and see you in the next one. And by the way, don't forget to go ahead and grab the number of mine from the description of this specific video. That my number is there. Also, my email is there. Shoot me a call or a text. Let's talk business for just a cup of coffee's price. Nice. A goodbye. See you in the next one.